Okay, so also I want to tell you that you please feel free to let me know any questions at any time. And also I have Diego, who is accompanying me today, who is going to who he's my assistant or my host today. So through him, we're going to be answering any question that we might have. And obviously, at the end, we're going to open a question for questions and answers. And welcome to this presentation. Let me tell you that right now I am in Baja California Sur, which is a beautiful state, and I hope very soon we can host the Confien here in my state. Let's start. The objectives of this workshop aims at providing theoretical and practical knowledge related to pertinent and current topics in language teaching, classroom and virtual learning environments, and memory processes involved in foreign language acquisition. Then in simple words, we're going to see how the brain works and how we can enhance students' memory to move whatever we teach them and whatever they learn from short-term memory into long-term memory, which is not as simple as CT said, but we're going to see some aspects of it. This is the workshop outline. I think it is important for me to tell you what we are going to be doing during this hour and a half. First, we're going to cover the aspect of what memory is. We're going to cover also some physiology of memory. We're going to study a little bit the brain structure. We're going to see the types of memory that we have. And also we're going to touch a little bit the topic of memory and second or foreign language learning or acquisition. Additionally, we're going to see some theories that explain retention and automaticity, which also be covered in order to give attendees, or in this case you, a strong foundation for the practical section of this workshop. Because yes, there is a practical section. And then in the end, we're going to have some practice. This is what we're going to be doing in the next hour, an hour and 15 minutes. Sounds interesting?
Yeah, very interesting.
I hope it does. There we go. This is where we're going to start. I have prepared this Google document, and through this, in order to have a notebook, a collective notebook. If you guys, probably because of this square that is in front of the presentation, you might not be able to scan it, but I'm going to ask Diego to paste on the chat box, the link to the Google document, which is going to be where we are going to be taking notes, and also we are going to be participating. Diego, if you please help me paste the Google document link on the chat box if you guys cannot scan this QR code.
Ready.
Okay, please let me know whenever you are in the document.
Ready.
Ready. Okay. You are supposed to be editors so that you can complete activities number 1 and activity number 2 right now, please. And number 1 is obviously the introduction. I would really love to know who you are, what levels you teach, and where are you. And the activity number 2 are the expectations you have from the workshop. If you don't mind, I'm going to give you 5 to 7 minutes to complete activity 1 and activity 2. Diego, do you know how to remove this thing that appears? El documento, te dije que quiero. Excuse me.
I don't know, but you have on the chat a comment of Moises that maybe can help you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a look at it. Okay, now I see that you are completing the information about your location and your identity. But what I would really like to know is your expectations, which is activity number two.
So we're only supposed to do activity 1 and 2 right now, right?
Yes, just those two ones.
Okay, done.
Done. Wait, great. We're just gonna give a couple of minutes more, and then we're going to continue. Oh, by the way, the little square disappeared.
Yeah, great job. I have to say that it was a bit overwhelming.
I
This
know. It was kind
whole
of
thing about
it
editing.
was making me anxious actually.
Well, yeah, the window. Yeah, that was another thing too. No, but I'm talking about this thing about editing because we're all trying to edit at the same time. So it's just like, oh man, it seems like a chaos, but I think now everybody seems to be getting the hang of it
Yeah,
here in
once you
this.
get the hold of it,
Oh,
things go easily.
yeah. Anyway,
I
all
have
right.
a question here.
Please do.
Yes. What do you mean by high impact image?
Oh, we are not there yet. We just activity
Oh,
one and
okay.
two.
Okay, thank you.
No problemo. Okay, here we are. Thank you for filling this information for me. And now I'm gonna go over some of your expectations. You have people from different parts of the country, obviously, from Mexico City, from Jalisco, obviously, from Tamaulipas too. Well, I'm going to go to the expectations. We have learn how to help my students remember vocabulary, learn anything I can that can help me improve my teaching practice, obtain theoretical basis to work with when teaching subjects such as enseñanza de la gramática, en enseñanza de vocabulario, en licenciatura en enseñanza y aprendizaje del inglés, find out practical resources to use with my students. I think this is the most important thing, no? That we can see things that are applicable to our daily practice. To be aware of the alternative strategies to foster retention of language in online environments, especially with lower level students. Yes, right now that we are in online or virtual environments, this is something that we are all concerned with. Learning different strategies to help my students facilitate their learning, to get some strategies for activities, to have great insight on memory, learn some activities to work, add new strategies, and what kind of activities, acquire many abilities to apply in my daily teaching. Thank you. We're going to stop for now. If you didn't get the chance to complete this part of the workshop or to complete your expectations, that is no problem, because anyways, you're going to have this document with you like until Google Docs disappears. So anyways, I prepared this actually because one of the purposes was for you to have access to all this information. And obviously, if you consider it necessary, I can send you the presentation at the end. So for right now, I'm going to please ask you to stop doing what you're doing. Just finish your idea in writing, and then we're going to go with the next thing.
I just hope you get to read all of this.
I will. Definitely I will, because this is important.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Now, this is the second activity that we are going to have today, which is a brainstorm activity. And for this reason, I'm going to use the Menti system, which is interesting. And in case you don't have a code reader, I'm going to ask Diego to send you the link to this Menti presentation. And this is just to create a word cloud about what comes to your mind when you hear the word memory. This is just what we are doing. Obviously, you are fully aware of this. I am activating your previous knowledge. We're just preparing for the contents of the workshop. So I would really like to read and see, and I am going to show it to you in a minute also, how the word cloud is configured, so you can see more or less what we share, the knowledge that we share about memory. Just tell me if the code works and if the link is there in the chat.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
Okay, I'm going to share with you the image that is being created. Okay, you can see here on the screen how the word cloud is being created and all the words that you are including in the survey. We need to take a couple of minutes more. Very interestingly, I'm seeing amygdala, which is interesting. I see brain, I see recall, I see knowledge, memorize, image, intelligence, short time memory, experiences, retention, necessary for learning, thought, repetition, fascinating, study, repeat, retain. We're just going to wait just one more minute to see how much we more or less know about memory and its workings. Okay, thank you very much for participating in this part of the workshop, which is the word cloud. I'm just going to mention the biggest words, which are obviously the ones that are more repeated. We have remember, repetition, recall, hippocampus, which I'm going to be also speaking about the hippocampus too, the amygdala, the mind, repetition, and intelligence. Okay, those are the biggest words, and those are the ones that we're going to be covering during this workshop. I'm going to go back to the presentation. You can obviously you can continue there, or you can join me in the presentation again. ¿Es este? Sí. What do you think we remember some things and we forget others? This is a very important question. This is how I am opening this workshop. Why do you think we remember some things and forget others? And then I'm going to share two anecdotes. One anecdote is going to be my anecdote, and then somebody from you in the audience is going to share another anecdote. And I'm going to start with my anecdote. What do you see in the image?
A dog.
A
What
pit
kind
bull.
of dog?
An angry dog. An angry and
furious
scary
dog.
dog.
Angry and scary dog, yes. How else can you describe the dog?
Aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah.
Dangerous.
Yeah. Okay, here goes my anecdote. Very recently, I moved to the house that I am currently living in. No, I moved. I used to live in Ana Colonia, which is next to my current colonia, and then we had the chance to, by the way, use our for Easter credit. I recommend you do that. And then we just moved to this new house. And it happens to be that my house is very close to the school where I work, my normal. And then every day I go walking and would come back walking because it is within a walking distance. And then I used to live a little further away, and then I would take the car. But right now I usually go walking whenever there's classes, obviously not right now. But then on my way to the school and back home, there was a house that had one dog, which is identical like this one I am showing you. And then obviously I didn't know that there was a dog in that house. And sometimes the dog was there and sometimes the dog was not there. But he would always bark at me. Fortunately, it was inside and there was this big garage protection door, that the grid that would prevent the dog from going outside and bite me. But every day, or if not every day, several days a week, when I go to the school to go to work and when I return, the dog would surprise me in a bad manner. No, it would scare me a lot, and with all his, his anger and his need to bite me. And then I was doing this over and over again when I was going to work and back home during certain amount of days, I don't know, a couple of weeks, until I finally remembered that there was a dog in that house. And then instinctively and automatically, I just moved to the next, to the walk side in front. Or I would just walk away from that house, within a distance, so that the dog cannot scare me anymore. Then and that was really interesting to me to see how automatically my brain registered the presence of that dog in that house. How can you explain this process of remembering and memory according to this anecdote that I am telling you? Can somebody give me an insight on this?
It is just because it is very strongly vinculated. It is linked with the feelings, with your feelings, with emotions. Like in this case, it was fear. So how could you not remember the presence of that dog there?
I know. And I know, Sandra, and thank you for participating. And how do you think this happens, or how does this affect the way we behave?
Maybe it was a response to a constant stimulus.
Now we're speaking about behaviorism, right? And then I was also taking another course some other time, and then the instructor, which is a neurologist, told us that our brain loves behaviorism. That's the way we learn most of the time. And then I'm going to ask my friend Enrique to share an anecdote with us about something that he remembers. And then I'm going to give him the chance to explain why that memory or memento stick to his mind.
Hi, everyone. I hope you have a good day. My greetings from here, Altamira, Tamaulipas. This is where I am right now. Okay, something that I remember pretty well is when I was a little boy, some years ago. My mother was very strict. I mean, she was very, I don't know how to put it, but she wanted us to grow good, honest, honorable men, and my sisters as well. And I remember that she was very strict concerning our appearance when going to school. And she wanted us to have our shoes shining, but really, really clean and shiny shoes. And it was a Monday, but every Sunday, when I was supposed to have my shoes ready, there was a TV show on TV that every time caught my attention at a very high level. I don't know if you probably you don't remember this TV program, but the name of the program is Combat. It was a World War II, and then this program was very what is the word, appealing to me, and I was always ready to watch the program. But on that day, that made me forget about shining my shoes. So what happened the next day, when I was about to go to school, I remember my shoes, they are not clean. So I hid myself behind the bed, and I was there shining my shoes real quick. And unfortunately, my mom discovered me. What are you doing? And I said, I'm cleaning my shoes. No, it's not time for you to clean your shoes right now. You go to school just like you are right now. So I went to school with my barefoot, walking on the hot, scorching street. The pavement was really hot, and I got to school with no shoes on my feet. So all of the students were laughing at me. They were pointing and laughing, and until one of the teachers came and saved me from all those my classmates. Okay. And then she saved me from them. She asked me what happened, Enrique. I said, I forgot to clean my shoes. Oh yeah, and I know your mother. Well, okay, everybody, go. You go to the classroom, because they were going to honor for the flag honors and all of that, So every Sunday, every Sunday, the very first thing from then on, the very first thing that I tried to remember was to clean my shoes. So from early in the morning, I was very concerned. I was very preoccupied to get my shoes clean, because I didn't want to go to school again with my barefoot.
Thank you, Enrique. That's a very nice anecdote. It must have been very traumatic to you, no?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. How can you tell us, or why do you think that memories stick to your mind for so long?
I don't know, probably because classmates were laughing at me, probably because the street was really hot when I was walking on it. And, going to school with no shoes when everybody was wearing their shoes, it was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, all of those things are integrated, no? And then
Yeah.
I'm going to give a word about this. I don't know if anybody has any comment on Enrique's anecdote regarding his memory before I give my own opinion. Well, Enrique, I'm going to tell you something. I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you there were a lot of emotions involved in that episode of your life,
Yeah.
both good and bad. Good because probably you felt the support of your teacher, but also bad
Yeah.
because you felt the embarrassment because of the bullying of your classmates, and also the, I don't know, your mom's angry. She was your mom's anger, and then that's what makes episodes remain in our memory, emotions. And this is one of the aspects we're going to be covering our workshop, how we are supposed to manipulate in a way things in our classroom so that our students are emotionally involved in what we are doing. And in that manner, in that input, things are going to stick to our students' memory in a longer term. And we're going to move knowledge from the short time memory into the long time memory, like the longer time memory, just like the case of with my dog and your case with your shoes. Okay, we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay, then here we have, obviously what I'm doing right now is we are seeing some theory before going to the practical aspects of the workshop, because theory is necessary. Then what is memory? Memory is the ability to take information from the environment, encode it, store it, and effectively retrieve it at a later time when a situation requires it. No? And then I have this little comic here, this comic strip that says the ability to store, consolidate, and retrieve information over periods of the measure of from 10 minutes to hours, days, and years. Sorry, from minutes, hours, and days. There are some things that we never forget, and there are some things that we tend to forget too. And this is a diagram. This diagram is a representation of the memory system. This is how the information moves from the sensory input, the heat on your feet, no, or the cold, or I don't know, this mocking your classmates were doing of you, or the dog that was scaring me, through the senses. Those events come into our mind. And then we have a filtering mechanism. Sometimes we just don't pay much attention to things and then just go to the wastebasket and we just forget about them. But if we pay attention, they go into the short-term memory and then stay there for a little while. And eventually, if we give a little bit more attention, rehearsal or repetition, we can store those memories or those pieces of information into the long-term memory, in those files that we have inside our brains that no one really understands how they work. But eventually, the information is going to be there and it's going to be retrieved, unless forgotten because of other reasons, like, I don't know, when we grow old, or we, I don't know, add new things and we tend to forget old things, so we change our thoughts with new theories, we change our points of view in life. This is just put it simple, or simply put, this is how memory works. We receive information through our senses, and when we pay attention, it moves to the short-term memory. And then if we practice it and repeat it and rehearse it, it moves on to the long-term memory. Then the physiology of memory. This is something that you saw we saw, all of us saw in the word cloud. Now, memory is not supported by a single brain region, but rather a wide set of brain areas. One brain region, however, is known to be specifically important for the memory, and that is a structure deep in the brain's temporal lobes called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus was one of the words that appeared, one of the biggest words in our word cloud. And neurophysiology and brain chemistry facts that are closely related to memory and forgetfulness. Physiologically, memories are produced by variations in the sensitivity of synaptic transmission from one neuron to the next. So there's a lot of things going on in our brains with our neurons connecting and sharing information. The main parts of the brain involved with memory are the amygdala. You know that the amygdala, probably you know, the amygdala is the one concerned with emotions. So I have it here on the screen. The hippocampus, the cerebellum, and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is involved in fear and fear memories, like my neighbor's dog, or Enrique's mom, no, or the classmates mocking, bullying. The hippocampus, on the other hand, is associated with declarative and episodic memory, like my first kiss. Who doesn't remember his first kiss, no? And as well as recognition memory, like your face in the mirror. Whenever you see a photograph, you can recognize people, and even you can recognize your face. That is what we call by declarative and episodic memory. And also the cerebellum plays a role in processing procedural memories. What is procedural memory? The procedural memory is what is automatic. How do you remember to ride a bike or playing the piano, or the L2 competence when it becomes automatic? No, the prefrontal cortex appears to be involved also in remembering semantic tasks. Semantic task means that we know that the grass is green, we know that the sky is blue, and some other things that we can remember because of the characteristics. No, that's the semantic task. Also, like knowing the capital of the cities or knowing the prayers that we say at church. That is the semantic tasks. And this is just an image of the brain. Or we have the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, which is in charge of emotions, the hippocampus, and the cerebellum. This is just an indicator, just to visualize more or less how the brain is structured regarding memory. But then these variations in turn generate many pathways or facilitate pathways of signal transmission through the neural circuits of the brain. New or facilitated pathways are called memory footprints. They are important because once established, the mind can activate them to reproduce memories. And then this is what we are going to be talking in a few minutes about, how we can create those memory footprints in our students and obviously in ourselves too. L1, or Espanol in our case, is mainly acquired, and L2 is most often learned. In this case, we are teaching our students L2, so we are speaking about learning English as a second language in this case, and therefore memory plays an important role in this process. I'm not speaking about bilingualism when you're growing, that you learn two languages at the same time, because that's a different story. But right now I'm going to be covering the topic of learning an L2 or acquiring an L2 after having previously acquired your mother tongue. And this is where the memory takes an important role. This is another chart that describes memory. We have short-time memory and long-term memory. The explicit or conscious memory is the one that we are aware of. We have episodic memory and semantic memory. Episodic is the events that happen to you that you can recall and tell. Semantic is, as I told you, the general knowledge of the world. And then we have implicit or unconscious memory. Priming is when we make associations. Now, when we think of the beach, we think of beer, we think of the sun, we think of sand, those associations that we have. And the procedural memory is the one that is automatic. For example, I don't know how to drive a car, how to walk, how to jump the rope, etc. How do we access stored information in our memory? We can access our information stored there in three different manners. By recall. So in this case, our memories that we can retrieve, like when I ask you who discovered America, somewhere in your files, there is that information. And then it's just a matter of concentrating a little bit, and then you can recall it. By recognition. Recognition means the identification of items previously learned, like in multiple choice tests. When we take a multiple choice test, we usually, by seeing the options and knowing the distractors, we get to retrieve what is in our long-term memory. Or also by following directions to reach a place. If you ask somebody, excuse me, how do I get to the hospital? And they tell you, okay, you take this, and you take the next to the right, and then you walk 2 or 3 blocks, and then you turn right. That is information. By recognition, you see that the bus station is there, or the park that somebody just mentioned is, then you have to turn to the right or to the left. That is by recognition. And finally, the number three, or the third aspects in which we retrieve information is by relearning. For example, when we are refreshing information, when we are going to take an exam, we review or we revisit things, no, before a test. And this is very interesting. For example, the last one, relearning, is when we're going to have an exam with our students and you're going to assess their command of present perfect. Obviously, sometimes or very oftentimes, they're going to review the past participles of the verbs, no, and they are going to be refreshing memories. These are the three ways in which we can access the information that is stored in our memory. And this is just another example of how we retain things in our memory. You know, as I just mentioned through this, we have sensory memory through our eyes, our skin, our ears, etc. And then if we pay close attention, it stores in the short-term memory, and then if we rehearse and repeat, it moves on to the long-term memory, and then we can retrieve it. Types of memory. Psychologists conceptualize memory in terms of types, in terms of stages, and in terms of processes. As types, we have explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit and implicit. As stages, we have sensory memory, either it's a term, it should be term, short-term memory and long-term memory. And as processes, like encoding, storage, and retrieval. We're going to go over this just very fast. Explicit memory is the one that we are conscious to remember. We make a little effort to remember things. And the implicit memory is info or information remembered unconsciously and effortlessly, like a song. No? When a song sticks to our mind, we make no effort to remember it. But whenever we take an exam, probably you might have certain level of exercising our brain in order to retrieve some memory. How long, these are some questions that I'm going to ask you. How long do you remember a phone number or email to register on the phone or address book? If I tell you my number is 2187389, I don't know, 22. For how long do you think you can keep that information?
Seconds, maybe.
Seconds, maybe, yeah. And because we don't need more. Desislava, you can share with us what you think.
Well, it depends, because if there are phone numbers of relatives or friends that we're using regularly, we tend to remember them. For example, the phone number of my husband, I don't have to remember it, but I still remember it because I sometimes put it in different forms when I submit information. So since I have to use it, I tend to recall it. If I don't have to use it, like for example, the phone number of my son, I should remember it the same way I remember my husband's, but I don't, because I don't have to fill it out in different official forms. Mm-hmm. So I don't use it, I don't remember it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you mentioned something that is very interesting. What you're saying is that you're rehearsing it. You're rehearsing your husband's phone number over and over again, and then it sticks to your mind. And probably you I don't know, you don't need to make a lot of effort to remember it or to recall it because it's fresh. No?
Exactly. So it comes naturally.
Mm-hmm. And then the next question, thank you. How long do you remember to ride a bike? Do you forget how to ride a bike?
Not really. That's something that you kind of like remember for the rest of your life. You know, once you learn something that is like well learned, I mean, it's going to stay there in your mind forever and ever.
I know, especially when we practice it. And then if we don't, I don't know, if for any reason, I don't know, you have an accident or something and you're not able to ride a bike for a certain time, but then again, you take a bike again, it's just a matter of a little practice and then you are off again. No, you can do it again almost immediately. How do you remember which key opens what door? Or you don't?
I never remember unless I have something on the key that remembers me, that reminds me, a color or a mark or something, because I never remember.
That happens to me too. because in my house every night we put 3 different locks in 3 different doors, and then the keys are kind of similar. But what do you think we don't remember which key opens which door?
Maybe because they look similar sometimes.
Uh-huh. And also, I tend to think that we just don't remember because they are not essential information. I mean, it is important, but there's always just, in my case, is 3 keys and 3 locks. Like, it doesn't take a long time just to, check which one opens which. No, it's just matter of a couple of minutes. Then it's, I don't know, I think my brain doesn't really consider it strictly necessary to remember if it's not that vital. Okay, I'm going to move to the last question. How long do you remember your email password? Or do you tend to forget your email password? Or your ATM code?
No.
No, why not?
Because they are very important. And afterwards, because we use them regularly, so it's almost impossible to forget. It's like something you do automatically almost.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that you use. Yes, I'm
right,
listening.
and this is something that you do over and over and over. And sometimes we end up doing something that is wrong, but I think it's very convenient that we tend to use the same passwords for many different accounts, right? I mean, this is something that is
Very
wrong because we're
unsafe.
supposed to use like a different password for every single account that we have, maybe in the bank or an email account, whatever. But we tend to just use the same one. So that's why it kind of like becomes automatically. But once you change something, okay, for example, let's say you open up a new account and they ask you to create a new password. And once you start using something that you're not used to, then it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, you can always use something that you relate to. That's one technique to remember something, right? Like maybe not your birthday or something very logical, but something that had an impact in your life and you can remember, like the number of an old house you lived in or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's not so difficult, but yeah.
I'm going to tell you a secret right now. I'm going to tell you a secret about my code for the cards, for the bank cards. It's 4 digits. It's my marriage date. And then that is something I will never, ever forget, for a good or for a bad reason. So far now, it's just for a good reason. And then also something that I want to tell you is that another technique is, as you mentioned, we can relate things in order to remember. Like if a number is not something that is very essential to remember, but if we relate it to an important day in our lives, like in my case, my marriage date, or the date of birth of your son, or a special number because I don't know, it's the house that you lived in, or the name of your first pet. And usually those are the questions that they ask you, to recover passwords. They using that technique, which is called association. And that's what we're going to see in a minute, how we can associate things in order to remember other things. Okay, I'm going to skip this because this I already explained it. Memory consolidation, which is important process by which memories are strengthened to allow for long-term retention, increasing connections between neurons, generating new neurons. Sleep promotes memory consolidation. That is just a little piece of information I wanted to include here. We should sleep, have a good night's sleep, and for the correct amount of hours. Stress also affects memory consolidation. Cortisol reducing hippocampal volume and is risk of depression. So whenever we are under pressure and under stress, our level of retention is enormously reduced. And then diet and exercise. You know about the omegas and the good fats and the exercise that we need to do. These are some pieces of advice regarding retention and memory consolidation. And then here we have the ability to hold and manipulate. We have already seen this. What are the implications of memory to language teaching? What are the implications of memory to language teaching? Now we go to the practical part of the workshop. And again, this is the Menti presentation, but I'm just going to change I'm just to move to the next slide so that you can please share your ideas. about, give me just a couple minutes. There you go. You can just please scan the QR code and start giving an answer to this question. What are the implications of understanding how memory works? It's the same link that we used at the beginning for the word cloud. So you can, if you please go back to the presentation and start answering this question.
You sure hit the nail on the head when you said you remember your first kiss?
We can, I don't know what you mean by that. I'm showing you the answers here. You can see
Liar.
those. We have mnemonics, knowing strategies, uh, time to expose the language, improve meaningful learning experiences, being able to help our students memorize. Creating experiences that are meaningful. It's essential for us in order to teach successfully, to improve the way of teaching. We can help students to learn in a better way. Um, design activities to help our students learn new vocabulary. It will affect the way we plan our classes, definitely, yes, and the types of activities we choose. We need to use different techniques when teaching vocabulary, for example, using efficient teaching strategies, design activities, better results, interesting activities, motivate students with their learning, take into account the factors that can affect students' memorization, provide students with tips or tricks to remember things more easily, improve our skills to teach. When I explain the topic with the students, to teach in a more effective way. Not everything is learned in the same way. It is important to understand memory in order to choose what suits best for specific language points. This is very interesting. It's not the same like learning grammar than vocabulary, or intonation and pronunciation. Vocabulary acquisition, make connections, relate to what's happening in the world, involve students in making decisions on their learning so it can be really meaningful. We can help students to become aware of their own learning, which is metacognition. I'm going to be speaking about metacognition in a second too. Students will be glad to notice their accomplishments. Students will use the tools for other purposes. Also, yeah, memory can be applied to any single piece of learning. It possibly the preconceptions of knowledge to assimilate and accommodate the information. The we speak about accommodation. The brain function and memory to know how students can learn a new language, understand the implications of emotions, feelings, and new experiences. This is closely related to the socio-emotional aspect of teaching, which is so much in vogue right now. Meaningful approaches. And then someone mentioned Bloom's taxonomy. In that case, using students' background knowledge eases the creation for construction of new concepts because students relate what they already know, they remember, with the new ideas and create a new one. I'm also going to speak about that, which is scaffolding, no? Okay, automaticity. I'm just going to leave it just one more minute, and then we're going to continue with the presentation. I think your comments are very interesting. It should be you who's giving this talk. This is a good question because if we as teachers know how memory works, we will be able to develop strategies and activities that help our students to learn better. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay, thank you for your comments and your thoughts. In order to produce intelligible and meaningful speech in the English language as a foreign, or in English as a foreign language, L2 users need to have a certain level of command of its lexis and some grammatical knowledge, all of which should have previously been properly encoded and consolidated and integrated into long-term memory, thus giving place to the appearance of automaticity. No? Clearly, I've been seeing that you guys are very interested on vocabulary learning. And this is very important because, you know, people say, or experts say, that even if we don't have a strong grammar, but if we have a good deal of lexis, then communication can appear, and then we can be functional in a foreign language. That's why memory is so important. Factors that increase or that may increase retention. First of all, attention. As I just mentioned, to move things from the sensory memory, the things that I feel, see, hear, or observe, in order that I can retain those, at least to the short-term memory, is that I need attention. How can you get students' attention? I'm listening. Especially
Like using
now.
some of the things that are in their interests.
And this is sometimes a complicated thing to do if we have a class at 7 a.m. and it's online, no? How do you get students' attention online? You know, there's this meme that says that teaching online is like having a spirit session or a seance in which you ask to someone who you don't know if he or she is actually there or not. How do you call students' attention in an online teaching environment? Somebody would like to share?
Well, I sometimes start my class with Mentimeter as you're using right now, to have all of them participating in something, and then hopefully to have them in the class.
I know this is a good option because, you know, having these things like Menti usually increases the level of attention because it's something virtual, it's something attractive and new, something innovative. Thank you for your comment. Any other comment? You can use the mic if you want.
I try to keep them busy and active. That's what I try to do.
For example?
Like doing different types of activities, Menti, some puzzles, some conversations, many things.
Yeah.
One right after the other.
No? There's this, yeah, one right after the other, but also you have to give them a break, no? Desislava, I'm listening.
Another way is through media, like you can project, and I'm sorry about that. My neighbors are
That's okay, don't worry. This is just common ground now for everyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but through a short video or a short a song, I've noticed that this catches their attention initially. Further on, you keep them occupied and you involve them in doing things rather than just perceiving. But more than anything, you catch their attention with something short, something that is new, a video, a song, and it seems to work for me, at least to grab their attention initially. Thank you.
Definitely, yes. And you used a very important word, which is short. In order to get students' attention, the activity should be short. Those of you that raise your hand, sorry, I cannot really see you, but just feel free to open your mic.
What I use is also questions, a lot of questions. So I start the class, and yes, I use the book, the readings, the listenings, and so on. But I do personalize the questions that are there in the book. So I will say, so about this theme, what has been the most embarrassing experience that you have had? And then I just, maybe sometimes by list, I will choose somebody with my list, so they don't know in what order I am going to ask them and to call on, and it's something that that will allow them to express something about themselves. It's not only about the class, you know, the structure, the very fixed things, but an open idea.
You mentioned very important things right now, and those I'm going to be speaking in a minute. You mentioned relatability, something that is attractive for them. And you mentioned also modification of materials. That is also essential. If the book presents something that is completely different to their reality, it's definitely not going to call their attention. Thank you very much for those insights. The next person who raised his hand, please.
Well, in my case, it's similar to the things that the person before me mentioned. For me, it works nominating students. I present some topic and then I tell them something about myself. Then they relate what I say, but to their own context. And this has happened to me that whenever I throw the ball to them, when I ask them to speak, eventually they start like what we are doing right now. They want to participate. They wanna let us know. We start sharing.
You know what you mentioned is very important. As if you noticed, I started my presentation with an anecdote on myself with my dog, and then Enrique shared his anecdote with his mom being very strict. By sharing personal experiences on the teacher's side, you are humanized, and your rapport with your students gets better, and then they can give you their attention because they know you care and that you are at the same level, that you just somebody with the same life experiences as anybody else. And this is very good for rapport. That's a very, very essential technique, sharing the teacher's personal life to teach. Thank you.
Exactly, showing that we care.
And that they are worth sharing things from your life. Obviously you're not going to share very intimate things, but at least that they can be part of your life, and that it's not just your job, that you're there because you're parts or you're members of the same team. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next thing. We have attention. Thank you for your participation. We have chunking, association, imagery, emotion, repetition, variation, multisensory teaching and learning, relatability, utility factor, and peer teaching. I'm going to give you the word in a minute. I'm going to move on because of time constraints. Before I move on to these techniques and give you the techniques that I have prepared today, I'm going to have a word on intentional and incidental meaning. Can you tell the difference between intended and accidental learning? Can you learn things by accident and not focusing on it? Someone, please.
Sure. For example, you learn vocabulary from songs, from movies. That will be incidental, and intentional will be when you want to learn the regular and irregular verbs or certain kind of grammar. That will be intentional learning.
Fantastic definition. Somebody else?
For example, when reviewing vocabulary, the main focus is on them learning to use the words. That would be the intended. But as an accidental type of learning would be using technology. For example, for those who are new on using Quizlet or Padlet, they are learning how to use these tools for themselves and probably for their future learning.
Yes, definitely. Yes, that's incidental versus intended learning. Okay, I'm going to move on. Thank you. Now we go to the core of the workshop, examples of activities and the resources to promote language learning. Now you want to start taking notes. Imageries and emotion. Imagery, stories, or image, stories, and emotion. In this case, I am showing you this image about two persons who ran out of gas, no? And they just, I don't know, the girl is calling on the phone and the guy is asking for hitchhiking, or the person is hitchhiking to get to the nearest gas station. What can we use this image for? What language aspects can we teach with this image? What comes to your mind?
How to ask for help.
Ask for help, yes. Okay, now we're speaking about functions, right? Asking for help. Somebody else?
I suppose that you may have to teach them some basic vocabulary about car and gas and things like that. So whenever they ask for help, they can find the right words to express themselves, right?
Vocabulary, right? Yes, definitely, yes. Giving suggestions too.
Storytelling, perhaps you give them the image and have them create a story around the image.
That is fantastic, because the moment they create something, it sticks to their memories, no, for longer, because it's part of their part of themselves.
Phone calls, vocabulary.
And you know what? Something that comes to my mind is like teaching should have, the past models, no, should have. You know, for advanced levels or higher intermediate levels, like you should have filled the tank, no. And the girl probably saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have come with this guy," no. We have these images that can create emotions. And now I'm showing you these images that you can see here. And then I have like the big bad dog that I just mentioned, that it's charged with emotion and it creates feelings. And in the second picture, we have El Cruz Azul, which finally, after so many years, they got the championship and the cup. We have Miss Mexico, who won Miss Universe. And we have, do you recognize the number 4 picture? Do you know who she is?
Lorraine Warren.
Lorraine Warren. Yeah. You know, we need to provide images for every type of personality. And maybe we have girls that are really into beauty pageants. We have guys who are very much into sports. We have people who like movies. And we have people who like animals or who don't like animals. This is what I meant at the beginning of the session when somebody asked me, what do you mean about impact images? Do you think these images can create certain impact, emotional or psychological impact on your students?
I think so, yes, because students can connect one or more images to something that has happened to them before.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the thing about the Cruz Azul is something very emotional and very, I don't know, very sensitive for students or for all Mexico, no? We are all very at the expectations if they would win or not. And then there was this thrill feeling when they won, and I don't know, and also with Miss Mexico that won, or when you go to the movies to watch a horror movie, there are emotions involved. Then what I mean by this might be meaningless to you, but probably for your students, is meaningful, or for other people, what I see or what I'm trying to convey is that we need to find images that have an impact on your students. And that's why I have the other activity in the Google document, in which I would like you to take a couple of minutes and find an image on the internet.
Continues to be built
And
thanks to the effort and collaboration of more of our colleagues from the English Academy.
What is that? I don't know what that is, but anyways, I want you to please go on the internet, Google an image that you consider to be an image of high impact, and paste it on the document, just to see how we can conceive high impact images that we can include into our teachings. Is the instruction clear?
Which document do you paste it on? Where do we paste the image?
I'm going to ask Diego to paste the link again. It's the same Google document that we've been using it since the beginning of the workshop. And then I want you to find something, an image that you consider to be of high impact to your students. Obviously, it depends on the type of students that you have. I don't know your students, but you probably do know your students more than I could imagine. And then just paste one little image that you consider to be useful and as a support to your teaching, and that it can create such an impact that it might create an emotion in your students so that they can retain what is being taught. I'm going to give you, I don't know, 4 minutes. I am seeing here very, very interesting images. How do you say socavón in English anyways? Do you know?
Sinkhole.
Sinkhole. Yeah, the sinkhole. That is in, yeah. It's a
Shithole?
very,
No?
yeah, I think it is. It is a very dramatic image, no?
If it was my house, yes.
Even if it's not, you have to show some empathy.
You heard that the dogs were trapped there?
No? Can you tell us about it while the others paste their image?
Well, two little dogs fell into the sinkhole and they were trying to rescue them, but they haven't been able to do so because they said that it could put the lives of those who will try to
To
save
save the
them
dogs
in
at stake,
danger.
yeah.
So maybe they will, yeah. So maybe they will
Yeah.
die, and that makes it more.
Yeah, one of the dogs is a pit bull.
Really? Like the one that scared me.
That's what I remember so far.
You know what? This is that you can create something that I do very frequently while I'm just going to be chatting with you as you use those, you paste your images. I love, and this is something that I really enjoy doing, and I consider that it's great, at least for me, is using authentic material. Then by using this, I don't know, articles or, articles or information from the internet, but authentic material, it really helps us, or it has really helped me at least to present high impact images and high impact stories that usually stick to their minds. And that is something that I really enjoy doing, using authentic material. I hope the guys from Cambridge University Press are not listening to me. And then we have the flowers growing out of the rocks. Yeah, like striving, no, and making life different and more beautiful in blooming. Nature is incredible. And now who pasted the one about the polar bear? Can you share with us a little bit? How would you use it?
Yes, it was me. In this case, well, my students, we recently did like a writing about tigers, and I found out that they are very into like protecting animals or something like that. And so I think this picture can give them like an opportunity to write like an essay using the clue words of sequence, and exploring their vocabulary, writing, and grammar at the same time. So I guess it will be like a good opportunity for them to develop more skills.
And you know what you said is very interesting in the aspect that why are we teaching English? This is something that I always say in my presentations whenever I have the chance to present before an audience, is that we are teaching English not only to have them speak, but to have a better life. And right now, what we have to do is that we have to create global citizens. No matter if we live in a small town in Tamaulipas or in Oaxaca or in Chiapas or in a big city like Monterrey or Mexico City, we need to start creating global citizens which are concerned with what is going on in the world, because what we want is what we it's not what that we want, is that we need them to take an active role in society, and not only in their communities, obviously in their communities, but at a global scale. And now that you are using this for essays, I think it's fantastic, because it gives them the opportunity to look into the broader image, to see the picture and from a different perspective. And thank you for your comment. And now we see here a tsunami. Who used the tsunami image and why? Diego,
Me.
by the way, how many minutes do we still have? Please tell us about the tsunami.
5 more minutes, Luis.
5. Oh my God. Okay,
Yeah,
tell us.
I chose the photo because I think the image is impact. It gives you an impact on something. So I would use it with conditionals, with would, writing a story, like what would you do if you were there? Okay, like minutes or seconds before the tsunami hits you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like in preparation, like for conditionals. Okay, I'm gonna move fast right now. Most of the things that I'm going to mention were already mentioned by you, so I'm just going to mention them instead of explaining too much. So we saw about the imagery, and then anecdotes. We said about anecdotes from the students, anecdotes from the teacher's life that can create a stronger bond between students and teachers. No, they can help students become emotionally engaged, intellectually engaged. We can have a clear structure about real life stories or storytelling, with a clear structure, easy to follow, include a degree of tension or mystery, like Enrique was saying that he was behind his bed, all shivering and cleaning his shoes. Then with the emotional contrast also, like happy to sad, afraid to relieved, and with a repeated language patterns as necessary. Because as we mentioned before, teaching a language feature once doesn't mean that they are going to move it into the long-term memory. It means that we have to keep on repeating that piece of language in order for them to internalize it. And now, chunking. Chunking is very important, no? Like chunking means learning language features through phrases or group of words. Like how do you say your telephone number? You don't say number by number, one by one. You usually say, I don't know, 612, 221, like in groups. And that's because that helps memory retain things, and regarding language, when we use chunks, is it when we teach our students phrases and not single elements. Like when I was a kid, blah, 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 blah. Whenever you are, I don't know, teaching used to or past tense, you can give them this already prepared structure so that they are easily or more easily remembered. If I were you, had I known, for more advanced students in inversion, subject and verb, have you ever take a look at the common gonna, wanna, have to, and gotta, and idioms and collocations? No, can somebody give me a word on chunking? Do you guys use chunking?
Yes.
That's my line of
We can
research.
use them as idioms, as phrasal verbs. I don't know. It's a good idea to help the students, especially when learning new vocabulary.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. You were saying, Enrique?
Formulaic language. That's my
Formulaic
line of
language. Yes,
research.
formulaic language is, chunk. It's chunks. It's
Yes.
just pieces of language all together, and that helps, like collocations, no?
Yes.
That helps increase the level of vocabulary that students get.
That's right.
And then the class environment or the rapport. This is what I just mentioned. Obviously, I'm not saying crossing lines, but I'm saying letting your students know that you guys are on the same team. And since they feel confident, about the anxiety and the affective filter theory, as long as they feel confident in avoiding bullying in your classroom and having a nice teaching and learning environment will help retain things. Why? There is also a scientific thing. It's not that it's not scientific, but as long as you are in a comfortable environment, cortisol reduces, and then dopamine and these other neurotransmitters increase, and they prepare our brain to retain more information. No, it's now past tense when we teachers were just like soldiers and strict. Now it's a different story. It's student-centered, and we need to make them feel that we are part of the same team. Storytelling or visualization. This is something I do with my students. I give them a blank comic strip, and they have to prepare their own story, because you give them the sense of production. It is them to create the language, and then it sticks to their memory more. If you give them an opportunity to express their ideas, and then that is fantastic. It's just as creating a story. I remember Once I had within a class, I had a reading, and then I told my students to create, we usually tell our students to create an organizing, a non, how do you call this? Those graphic organizers. And then instead of doing that, I gave them a comic strip, and the result was amazing. I even posted them on the walls and had a little exhibit because it was really good. Obviously, it had mistakes, but it was just a matter of correcting and not making a big fuss out of it. Just having them just create their own stories with the language or vocabulary that we are just learning. And then we just can create their own comic strip out of the reading or listening they just have, giving them a twist, etc. No? And then relatability and utility. We need to relate the materials to students, just as you mentioned before, modifying a little bit the books and materials content in order to suit our students' daily lives and their relatability. Like in this case, I'm showing you these two Mexican persons instead of showing you the two images from the book that present someone from I don't know, from Australia or from another part of the world. We need to include something that they feel identified with, so that they can feel that they are part of it. And repeated exposure. Language should be encountered and manipulated between 5 and 16 times before it is successfully committed to longer-term memory. We need to repeat the topics, but the difference is that we need to change the input variation, the sensory variation. If we are showing the passive voice, well, we can see the passive voice in a piece of writing, or we can see the passive voice in a reading lesson or in a speaking lesson, and not one day after the other. We can recycle and revisit topics, one day at a time, and here and then. Because now knowledge is, we learn with a U curve. It's not that we retain things, but we need to see things over and over again, just as I saw the dog many times before my brain remembered that there was a dangerous dog in that house. Metacognition, obviously this is important, have students monitor and recognize language patterns. Like in this case, I'm showing you the word formation. No? This is more cognitive approach in which we need to tell students to see and recognize patterns in the language. That's also going to help. If they see once the prefix on and you explain the prefix on, eventually they might be able to recognize it and retrieve that information from their long-term memory. And then we saw about reading, the incidental, and reading or learning through reading, through singing, to watching movies. They can encounter different language features, and little by little, it's going to be retained in their memory. This is the exposure hypothesis. Peer teaching, we learn more when we teach than when we study. Then having monitors and students helping others and collaborative work can increase the ratio of retention. We saw this already. Additional tips, well, exercising, getting enough sleeps, a healthy diet with omegas, avoid multitasking because we lose focus. We need to find relations and patterns, and we need to say it out loud. Summary, attention, chunking, associations, imagery, emotion, repetition, input variation, multisensory teaching, relatability, utility factor, peer teaching, and metacognition. All of these aspects can help move learnings from the short-term memory to the long-term memory and retrieve that information whenever it's necessary, those creating automaticity in ourselves as teachers and in our students. And this is the last part. Just this, you can do this right now or a little afterwards. Just scan the code or copy this link, and there is a special Padlet in which I would really love to listen or hear or read your comments about this presentation, and obviously some criticism or feedback that you can add so that I can improve for my next presentation somewhere in the future. I'm gonna open the mic, and with the help of Diego, if we have just a couple of minutes for questions or comments, and then we're going to say goodbye. Diego.
Hi, Luis. I'm afraid we need to finish right now.
That's okay.
So thank you very much, Luis. It was a pleasure to be in this very interesting workshop about memory. At Biseng, we'd like to present you with this certificate of participation, which reads as follows.
I'm going to open my camera.
Benemérita y Centenaria Escuela Normal de Jalisco otorga la presente constancia a Luis Presas Vera por su valiosa contribución como ponente del taller Language Learning Memory Strategies Applied to Virtual Learning Environments en el marco del Congreso Nacional de Formadores C en Escuelas Normales 2021 y lo firma nuestra directora, la doctora Verónica Ávila Sánchez. So, thank you very much, Luis. It was very interesting to hear you. And we invite you, teachers, to join the next long talks that start at 1:30. Okay, so
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your comments.
That's great.
Just use the Padlet so that I can hear from you. Have a good day and enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you. You did a
Thank you
fantastic
very
job.
much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great
Hope to see you
presentation.
soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. The link to the Padlet, please, because
I can do that, yes.
You should
I'm going to send
share the Padlet again so we can have the link. There you are. Thank you very much, Samuel.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.